Yeah.
The new president.
I am rolling.
You're rolling. If
Is
you would,
audio okay?
if you would pronounce and spell your name, please, and give us the title of your, whatever you want us to have in the subtitle.
Angela Williams, ANGELAWILLIAMS, Voice Today, VOICETODAY, voicetoday.org, O-R-G.
Could you scoot a little bit closer to the camera? I want your coffee right there.
Ooh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You do want to be looking at you, Audrey, and
Yeah,
not the camera.
What?
Even more than that.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Wow.
Watch
I
out.
don't know if I...
Okay, yeah, something like that.
Okay, gotcha. Let me just ask you, why do you do this work?
Out of my greatest pain has come my greatest purpose, and I truly don't want to see another child suffer from child sexual abuse. The repercussions of child sexual abuse, it takes you down a very self-destructive, a lot of self-hatred, self-loathing, self-disrespect, and what I have personally suffered, it is my life's passion to break the silence of child sexual abuse and to give children a voice, and to help protect them and to help prevent it. And it truly is a calling, and I consider myself a crusader who's willing to talk about some uncomfortable subjects, some very taboo in our society and very stigmatized issue.
And how widespread is this problem?
It is an epidemic, and people get desensitized by the word epidemic, but the CDC reports that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused by their 18th birthdays. And we can't hang our hats on those statistics because they further say that only 1 in 10 will ever tell. So if we know that 20 to 30% of our children are being sexually abused, and we know that disclosure is a problem, and we know that 93% are being sexually abused by someone they know, love, and trust, we are conditioned to stranger danger, then we have to step into a place of responsibility and of courage and begin to look at this very complex problem and how are we going to prevent it? How are we going to learn how to predict and prevent child sexual abuse, and how are we going to protect our children?
You mentioned that you...
Could you, I just want to say right away, could you have like a longer gap between questions? Because I'm trying
Just
to
for
adjust,
editing
like,
again.
Oh, okay,
trying to
we'll do.
adjust my
Okay, I'm
shot.
sorry.
And I'd also like to get that
Sure.
poignant, like some
Sure.
poignant silence
Yeah,
in between
yeah.
two.
Okay, we'll do it,
But
absolutely.
I almost got caught.
No, thank you, thank you, thank you. You yourself have experienced child sexual abuse. What happened?
When I was born, my biological father left my mother and I. And it was 1965, and my mother, at the time, it was very unpopular to be a single mom. She too was a school teacher, so she was on a mission to find a father for me. And unfortunately, she met a man who was extremely abusive, and my abuse when they were married at age 3 was horrific, and it intensified. And sexual abuse, I don't have a memory without sexual abuse in it. I don't have a memory without being touched, without being violated, without being beaten. My stepfather intensified the abuse throughout my entire childhood. When I thought it couldn't get any worse, it would get worse. I would be locked in hot cars. I would have my neck in a brace held under the water in a toilet. I would be beaten with a belt, a shovel, a hoe. So anytime I felt like I could tell anybody or talk to anyone, I was overpowered with fear and very submissive to whatever he would do to me next. And so you could say my spirit was broken at a very young age, and my voice was taken away at a very young age. And throughout my entire childhood, I cried out, as so many children did, non-verbally. I cried out in my actions. In 3rd grade, I took a bottle of vitamins and told my 3rd grade teacher that by the end of the day that I was going to lay my head on my desk and go to sleep and I wouldn't wake up. And so the 3rd grade teacher called the parents in, and of course, as often happens in this situation, not only was I groomed, but my mother was groomed and my teacher was groomed into thinking that I was a very dramatic child, that I lied a lot and that was not truthful. And no one ever asked why a child would take a bottle of vitamins. In 4th grade, I accused a classmate of raping me. Again, my parents were called in and they said that I had learned that word on a soap opera. And when I got home, I was beaten so severely, I vowed never to open my mouth again, and did not really take any action to escape until I was 17. And there was a very serious suicide attempt in which I took 64 sleeping pills at that time. And God spared my life. And I think He spared my life because I think that there has to be leadership in this area. There's some great organizations doing some great things. But for someone to stand up from a very organic place and share their own personal story really is what it's going to take. Survivors are going to have to stand up with courage and talk about this so that we can help together. We know the pain and we know the fallout, and it's a lot of collateral damage around this issue.
Did you ever think of talking to your mother about this?
My stepfather threatened to kill my mother if I ever told. And if I ever became rebellious or I ever tried to get away from him or tried to stop it or resisted in any way, he would take it out on my mother. So there was a direct correlation between my compliance and her safety. And it was real. It was devastating to watch your mother be beaten and watch your mother be verbally, emotionally, physically abused, and then feel like you were responsible. So I did try to tell her, there again, I tried to tell her in nonverbal ways. And that's a big part of what Voice Today is trying to educate, that we have to look into children's eyes, we have to look at behaviors, we have to look at their emotional well-being and health. And if someone had taken the time to really look into my eyes and to really ask some very pointed questions, but no one did. So I tried to tell my mother, and the words just never came. And how do you tell your mother? What do you say? And as a very young child, I didn't even know what was happening to me. I didn't know why or what he was doing to me. And of course, as things progressed and I was exposed to pornography and I was exposed to a lot of perversion, you learned very quickly what's being done to you, and that layer of shame just covers you, and you feel like you're in this dark, deep pit and you have no way out. It's very isolating. A survivor is very isolated, and they feel very much alone because it's not a subject that's talked about. It's not an issue that's addressed. I never, ever remember at a pediatrician's appointment, a dentist appointment, a counseling appointment, a teacher, anywhere, no one ever asked me, was someone touching me uncomfortably or someone made me uncomfortable. And as is often the case, we don't see bruises, we don't see cuts, we don't see stripes. That pain, those scars, that bleeding is taking place on the inside. And it's a very violent act. I don't think people understand. When a child is sexually violated, it's a very violent act. And it's very painful. But no one can see that pain.
After you were 17, suicide attempt, you were spared. How did you get from there to here? Giving people a voice.
It's been a very long road, and I say by the grace of God go I, only by the grace of God go I. The next day I was forced to disclose I had stolen the car, run away from home, tried to commit suicide, and had to face my mother the next day. And my mother gave me a trash bag in about 10 minutes to pack my belongings. So I was on the street. I know very well the slippery slope of prostitution and sexual exploitation, as at 17 I couldn't get a job. I was walking the streets of River Street, and because I couldn't sell alcohol, I was sitting on the curb, and a Corvette drove up and invited me in and said he could solve all my problems, and danced with the devil for about 2 weeks, and was waiting on my first John to show up. And you know, I became his girlfriend, and he brought me dinner, and he bought me clothes, and he wanted me to be really nice to his friend. And this is only in hindsight that I look back and realize what I was being groomed for at that time, and what would have taken place had I not really had the sense to say, what am I doing here and what is about to happen? And I knew what was going to happen. So I got out of that situation, but it really gives me a great insight into what those that we are seeing in the streets that are sexually exploited, these children that are sexually exploited, that feel very much alone and very much afraid and very much in need of just the basic care, basic necessities. So I really want a voice today to reach into what is the root of the problem of child sexual exploitation and human trafficking. If we know that 80 to 90% of these children that are commercially sexually exploited, if we know that they have been sexually abused as children in their own homes, why can't we turn our focus on how are we going to prevent child sexual abuse? How are we going to help children grow up with their personal and physical boundaries in place and their sexual boundaries in place so that they can be healthy, so they don't go down these self-destructive paths, so they're not running away and getting off a bus on a bus line for a pimp to be waiting to solicit them. So that's really what my heart bleeds for those children. And we definitely need intervention, and we need resources, and we need aftercare for them. But we cannot leave out that part of the equation. We can't leave out the knowledge that we know that these survivors are victims of child sexual abuse in their own community. So we really want to bring the focus to what are we going to do to root out this problem in our communities and in our homes.
How did you get away, by the way?
How did I get away?
From the...
I was waiting for the John to show up, his friend, and the phone rang, and I answered it, and they asked, "Who is this?" And this is Angie. "Who is this?" Angie, Randy's girlfriend. "Who is this?" "This is his wife, and I'm 9 months pregnant." So there too is a picture of a pimp that we don't want to see. We want to think that the pimp doesn't have a family and doesn't have a wife and doesn't have a normal life. So when I heard those words, I really stopped to think, he was a much older man. I really had no value, no self-worth, but I thought, I can't do this. I have to get out of here. So it was by my own volition that I left.
It's incredible that you were able to escape.
It was.
And find out that somebody can't. I want to fast forward a little bit. We're going to be talking with some parents and some kids today. Mm-hmm. Why is that so important for parents to do what they're doing for kids to be able to talk?
I am so excited, and this really is a dream come true for me, because we at Voice Today want to bring about empowerment by children getting their voice at a very young age. If they've been violated by child sexual abuse, we really feel you have to have your voice, you have to have your power returned, and you have to have a place where that trauma can begin to heal. And that can only happen when that secret is released and when help is there and intervention is there. So these children that you're going to be talking with today had the courage and had very responsible parents that asked the questions and trained them and taught them that no one is to touch your private parts, that you can always tell me if something happens. So these children were able to go to their families and able to disclose that they had been sexually abused. And these families acted responsibly. These families called the appropriate law enforcement. These families, even though, remember, the 93% is someone the child knows, loves, and trusts. So we will hear stories where it was a family member. And you can think about how difficult that decision was, that I am about to call law enforcement and make a report of a crime against a family member. So it's so important to be able to hear these stories and be able to see the correct role models of how to deal with this situation. So many children's disclosures are met with denial. They are met with, we just don't need to talk about that. We need to forget about that. You misunderstood. Maybe it didn't happen that way. We can't tell anyone that this has happened. And their disclosure is virtually shoved under the rug. And adults somehow think that children will forget about it, or they'll outgrow it like an allergy, or get over it. When the message that the child receives is no one cares about me, no one is there to protect me, maybe I deserved it, maybe I did something to encourage it, there's just this warped misunderstanding that somehow a child could even have the power to be consensual in a situation like that. And people don't look at this issue as a crime. If a child is shot in your living room and bleeding, your first instinct is to call 911. You immediately call 911. When a child stands before you and gives an adult a disclosure, really an adult wants to be the judge and the jury. They want to do the investigation, they want all the facts, the details, they really want to think about and ponder what the right thing to do in this situation. What we at Voice Today are screaming from the mountaintops that we have to look at this situation the exact same way as if the child has been shot and is bleeding, with the same amount of urgency, with the same amount of determination to get proper help, to get law enforcement to intervene. They are the professionals. They are the expert interviewers. They have the forensic interviewers. They have the DA. They have law enforcement. They have crimes against children. They are equipped to do the investigation and determine whether a crime has been committed. We as adults are not. It is our job to report.
Why do you think parents different? Is it shame on them too? I mean, I know you said that because of the family.
It is a complex and complicated issue. Child sexual abuse is not an easy issue. If you think about the 93% is someone the child knows, loves, and trusts, it could be a family secret that they may have to come to terms with their own sexual abuse. They may have to come to terms with knowing and having knowledge of other people in their family having been sexually abused. I think there's a level of responsibility and accountability that people don't want to face. I think it's a blemish on the family. There's a reputation at stake here. What will people think if they know? I think that there's a great deal of fear in the legal process in our justice system. I think there is a great deal of fear in how it will impact the family unit as a whole. I think there's a great deal of fear around the actual judicial process. And I think it's just an easier decision to shut the child up. I think it's an easier for them, not the right decision, certainly the most horrifically wrong decision they could make. But if they could just silence it and make it go away and just not talk about it, we'll just pretend it didn't happen. In my own family, everyone wants to pretend it didn't happen because no one wants to stand up and take responsibility that I was sexually abused for 14 years. There is not an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a neighbor, a babysitter, a doctor. There is no one, a teacher, there is no one in my life that wants to stand up and say, you know, I knew something was wrong and I take responsibility. I knew and I did nothing. I'm a mandated reporter and I didn't report. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage, and we're going to have to facilitate that kind of courage in our society for our children to be protected. We have to eliminate the bystander effect. We have to eliminate people knowing there's something wrong, knowing that 1 + 1's not adding up to 2. There's just something doesn't seem right in this relationship, something doesn't seem right in this home, something doesn't seem right in this child's life. You know, this child is cutting, this child has an eating disorder, this child is drinking, this child is skipping school, this child is trying to run away, this child is wetting the bed, this child is lying. Not that any single one of those symptoms points to child sexual abuse, but we have to look at it and we have to ask the questions, and we have to say that could be a possibility. That could be the reason. And where is the risk in that child's life? Where's the risky person? And we need to sit that child down and ask them, is something happening that's uncomfortable? I'm a safe person in your life. I can help you. You have to tell me. You have to talk to me. We don't want to get the answer, so we don't ask the question. I'm sorry, I get very passionate. Very passionate. Very passionate. So today is an important day. Today we are going to look at little children that are going to get their voice, and little children that want to be models for other children to speak up and speak out. We are going to talk to mothers and fathers who, against all odds, did the right thing. They fought for justice for their children. And when someone fights for you, and when someone does the right thing, then you have a place to foster healing. You have a place to foster self-worth. That message, that gives you a message that I am worthy to be fought for. I am valuable. My body is valuable. My innocence is valuable. My purity is valuable. And what was done to me was a crime. And those parents stood up and they did the right thing. And they got justice for their children. And they've gotten therapy and counseling. And now, with Voice Today, they get a platform to tell their stories. We will never know how these stories will impact this community, this country, this world. We'll never know what children will hear now that we have the internet. These interviews could go all over the world and encourage a child to tell and to disclose. On average, a perpetrator has 117 victims. A serial molester can have up to 400. So think about the power of a child disclosing sexual abuse. Is that number 1? Is that number 50? Is that number 116? But if it's number 1, the next child in line, the next victim in line could be saved. And we, in this show, probably can't even begin to talk about the complexities of a sex offender and the complexities and the failure of this country to provide aftercare and prevention and help in that area. But that's another area that eventually Voice Today wants to step into, because it's a vicious cycle.
Looking at the perpetrator who perhaps was victimized, him or herself.
Looking at that dynamic of a perpetrator being victimized, but also looking at the perpetual pornography, the problem of pornography in our society, the problem of how we sexually objectify children in our society. There's a lot of issues, I believe, around why and how someone acts out on a child. And it's very complicated. It's not an easy issue to dissect, but I do think that we have to begin to look at how we can prevent someone from acting out of a child. Let's say they do have a pornography addiction, and let's say that addiction goes into younger and younger children. You know, how do we intervene there? We just got to begin to ask these really tough questions.
By virtue of us being AIB, I've got to ask how the faith community can be part of the solution.
We beg the faith community to open their doors and to allow us as a partnership to facilitate awareness, prevention, and healing programs. My heart is that every single faith center on every single corner, every single denomination, every single faith that's represented in the United States of America will partner with Voice Today and will become a part of the Voice movement, and will say, we are doing something to protect our children. We are bringing about awareness in our congregations. We are responding with prevention programs. Voice Today has an entire menu of educational programs that we teach that educate adults on how to predict and prevent child sexual abuse. And then we help those survivors in all of these different faiths, because it crosses every faith, every social boundary, every ethnic group. And we can begin to say, we know that you were wounded as a child, and we as a faith center open our arms, and we have healing resources, we have support groups for you, we have retreats for you, we have workshops to help you deal with shame and unforgiveness and boundary issues and trust issues and intimacy issues and all of the things that a survivor deals with. So for once in their life, they won't feel like they are alone, and they will not feel that they are shamed or somehow responsible for being sexually abused as a child. That is my prayer. That petition goes up to God daily, that the churches will respond with courage, that churches will truly say we can be proactive and we can be responsible, And this is what we can do, is to bring these programs into our communities. Now, we all know that staff are trained, but those are very policy-driven trainings. We need trainings that are proactive, and we need trainings that provide very actionable tools so that adults will know what to do, will know how to respond, will know what the signs of abuse are, to know what risky situations are, will know how to take a disclosure from a child that will foster healing, to know how to respond. Every faith center needs a response team for child sexual abuse in place, ready to act when there's a disclosure. So there's a lot of work to be done. We've knocked on a lot of faith center doors and haven't had very many open. So I really pray that instead of looking at this on the defensive, that they look at it on the offensive. Yes, we may uncover a perpetrator in your congregation. Yes, that may happen. But wouldn't you rather uncover them now when they're on child number 1 instead when they're on child number 117?
You know, there's been so many stories about child sexual abuse, you know, in the Catholic priesthood, the Boy Scouts, etc. It just seems to be maybe more and more there have been disclosures. And I know we're going to probably have to wrap it up. We got the kids waiting. I don't want to keep them that long, but I think we need to address, I mean, what the hell's going on? You know, sorry.
It's the bystander and the protection of the reputation. Just like faith centers want to protect their reputation, we need to cover this up, and we need to make it go away. And it's an illegal response, and it's an irresponsible response, and it's an evil response. In Matthew, it's one of my favorite verses, Matthew 18:5 and 6. Jesus tells us, "Whoever receives a child in my name receives me. Whoever would cause one of these little ones to stumble," some versions say sin, "it would be better for them to have a millstone tied around their neck and dropped in the depths of the sea." So it is our responsibility as adults to protect our children, to protect all children. So, okay.